Welcome to part 2 of my Capture One Pro 7 workflow. Workflow is a funny thing actually because it's kind of boring, let's face it, putting your pictures in and making sure you get them out and all that sort of stuff. But I like to think about it a bit like brushing your teeth, okay? It's one of those things that if you set up really good habits right in the beginning, they're going to do you really well for the rest of your lifetime. Okay, might not be a perfect analogy, but you know what I mean. So let's now look at something called smart albums and how we work with smart albums through the editing process. Okay, so let's just check it out now. In the last video, we looked at giving the images a rating of 1 star on a basic technical edit. Now, this is normally what we do. We do editing on several passes. The first pass, with our technical edit, we give the images 1 star. The next edit will then go to 2 stars, and typically it'll be those images that we've given 2 stars that we'll often send to the client as low-res images. But let's just walk through that process now and the use of smart albums. So here we are in the session favorite Michelle and Junior, and we've already gone through these and given them 1 star, and then there's a couple of others that really stand out and we're giving those images 2 stars. Now if we go to the portraits of Michelle, which we called very creatively Michelle Portrait, I've given a 2-star rating by pressing the number 2 key to this image here, and you can see there's another one here that I've given 2 stars to. Yeah, you know what, I'm not quite sure about one of these other ones, so why don't we go for another 2-star rating, possibly with this image here. So we've now got images in one folder with 2-star rating, and we've got images in another folder with a 2-star rating. But what if I want to see all of those images together? So just the images that we've given 2 stars. Well, that's where smart albums come in. So let's create a smart album. The first thing we do is click on here and we go to smart album. Now you can set up a number of criteria in terms of smart albums, or set up a filter which determines exactly what will go in to the smart album. In this case, we're going to create a 2-star smart album. So that's what we'll call it. We'll go 2 stars or more. Match any, and then we'll go for our presets. Let's go 2 stars or higher. It actually says higher, I said more, same thing, okay? So the rating is greater than or equal to 2 stars, and we hit OK. And you can see we've created a new album over here under our session albums, okay? And this is a smart album, and inside this album now lives just the files that we've given 2 stars or more to in terms of the rating. So it's a really efficient way that if you've got various aspects of your shoot day or your shoot week or however you're organizing it into a variety of subfolders, and you've rated those images after editing, you can then look at just the pictures that you're interested in. Okay, so in this case, I've got 5 images that I've given a 2-star rating. I think maybe in this particular case, we should perhaps choose a couple more images from Michelle and Junior, or at least one more image from Michelle and Junior. So let's do that. We're going to go back and choose Michelle and Junior, and there's got to be one more image here. We've chosen that one already. I mean, I quite like that. I think that's quite nice. Or maybe that. Nah, let's go with this one. So we'll give that one 2 stars. So after giving that a 2-star rating, and we go back to our smart album, you can see we've now got 6 images inside here, and we can look at all 6 of those images together. So we've made our selection, we've created a smart album, we know the final 6 images that we like the look of, but now we need to do a little bit of work on them. So what's next? Well, one of the really cool things about Capture One is that you can customize it however you want. So I'm going to show you now exactly how we customize our quick tool tab, and we have exactly the same thing on our laptops on location as well as our computers here in the office. So it's very, very consistent. So whichever machine we're on, whoever's on that machine, the layout is very familiar, and this just helps aid a very efficient workflow. So if you have a look over here at the moment, we're already on our quick tool, but let's look at removing that. So let's remove this tool, remove the tool tab. Where is it? Remove tool tab. Okay. And let's now walk through the process of setting up the quick tool tab, because for us, this is actually where we put all of the tools that we use more than any other tools. There's a lot of things you can do within Capture One Pro 7, but what we like to do is typically use a very similar set of tools most of the time so that our workflow is as fast and efficient as possible. So this is how you create your own tool tab. I'm going to show you how I set mine up. How you set yours up is up to you, but this is our way. So the first thing we want to be doing is coming up here, and we simply right click, and we're going to add a tool tab, and then we come down to quick, just like that, and you can see it's just there. Now if you don't want it there, you can actually move it by hitting the command key, or just like that, and move it across to wherever you want it. So if we click on this at the moment, you can see it's got a whole bunch of things that are there by default. I actually don't use many of the things that you see here. So first up, I'm going to remove the histogram. So I'm going to get rid of that. Next thing I'm going to do, I'll leave the styles and presets. Base characteristics, I don't need to see that most of the time, so I'm going to remove that tool. White balance, perfect. I like white balance. Exposure, we leave that. High dynamic range, we leave that. Process summary, I don't care about a process summary in my quick tool. So they're the first bits that I sort of tend to stick with. Now, right at the top, we always have our Navigator. So let's add Navigator. Where is it? Navigator. Okay. The other thing that's really cool about this is you can actually move these. You just click on them and hold it on, and you can move them to exactly where you want them to be. So we normally have the Navigator at the top, and then just below that we'll have our exposure, and then we'll have our white balance, our high dynamic range, and we tend to run something along those lines. Actually, I think normally we'd run the white balance probably about there. We also like to have our local adjustments, plus clarity, very powerful tool, and color editor. Okay. So now in a really short space of time, we've actually managed to set up our quick tools with the tools that we use most of the time. Okay. Now I'm not going to get into too much detail in all of the tools in Capture One, because honestly that would take hours. Okay. This is really about giving you a quick guide to how we like to do things. So all of our tools are now set up, and because we were fortunate enough to get everything fairly right in camera, these shots don't need that much work done to them. But let's make a few basic adjustments to this first image. So I like to look at just one image on the screen at a time when I'm making adjustments. So the overall exposure looks pretty good here. We could probably crop this image. There's a little bit of stuff on the sides that we don't need, so I've chosen the crop tool, and let's just go down and just crop out a little bit of the excess stuff that we don't need, something like that. And I just choose another tool. If any of the tools in the top section of the screen up around here, if any of those have a shortcut, all you've got to do is hold your mouse over it, and a few seconds later that particular shortcut will come up. So for the hand tool it's H, for the crop tool it's C, and so on. Some of them don't have shortcuts. I don't think the loop, for instance, the magnifier, has a shortcut, but some of them do. So it's just, if you're not sure what they are, literally just move your mouse over them and hold it on there for a little bit, and you can see that they've got a variety of just single key shortcuts. Okay, so we've just done a very quick crop. What's next? The exposure in this doesn't look too bad, but I think we could really play around a little bit with the color. Okay, so let's make it a little bit richer. Let's concentrate on the blues that are in the shot, and also Junior, the fantastic tap dancer in this image. He's wearing shoes with a bit of sort of red in them. So let's lift out the red and create a little bit more contrast between these two colors, and they're almost opposite. So it's going to look and work really, really well. So first up, just some very minor adjustments to the exposure, something like that, just to richen it up a bit. Let's give it a little bit more saturation overall, because that's right for something like this. The color balance actually looks very, very, very good. So I'm not going to do anything with that. High dynamic range, don't need to increase any highlight or shadow detail. I like how it's looking. We're not applying a style. Vignette, yeah, let's just put a little bit of a vignette on there just to bring the attention in, tiny bit. Now sometimes after doing the vignette, you'll sometimes make a very small exposure adjustment, typically on your brightness. The brightness tends to adjust mostly the mid-tones of the image without having too much impact on your shadow and your highlights. Okay, if you do the exposure, it moves everything. So brightness will tend to move just the middle part in terms of the tone. So a little bit of clarity. I'll go for classic because I'm a classic kind of guy. Let's bring that up a little bit more in terms of the clarity there, just to get a little bit more punch in there. Now, for me, the color editor is possibly the most powerful tool that Capture One Pro 7 actually has. So let's have a little bit of a play with the color editor now. So I'm going to choose pick a tool there. I'm going to choose the blues. Okay, you can see we're in the blues, and let's really go for it on the saturation. Let's really, really, really bring up that saturation. I mean, let's just totally go for it. Now, let's choose another color. Let's push into these reds a little bit. Okay, I've just made a selection on Junior's shoe, and let's really push up the saturation on the reds. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And what I might do now is just slightly decrease the saturation overall. I think this image is starting to look really, really good, but I'm kind of curious as to what it looked like before. Now, a quick and easy way to do that would be to go to clone variant, because if I did a new variant, I'd lose my 2-star rating. And then let's reset everything using Command R to reset all of the adjustments on that particular image. And then this way we can compare a before and after. So the image on the right is before any manipulation, and the image on the left is once we've done some very quick, very minor adjustments. Sometimes it's quite nice to have a little bit of a look. Variants are very cool. Not going to get too much into variants now. I have done a whole tutorial about that already. Check it out if you want to find out a lot more about it. So I can say, yep, I'm really happy with what we've got there. I don't need to keep my variant, so I'll just delete that. And I delete it by simply pressing the backspace on once that variant is selected. Now, I've got several images that were shot under the same sort of lighting style as this. So I've got three images. And this is where Capture One gets really useful and very, very fast, because you're able to adjust one image and then apply it to a whole selection of images to change the look and feel of that particular image. So in this case, I'm just going to copy. If you look up here in the top right hand side of the frame, we can copy all the adjustments from this first variant like that. That puts all of the adjustments we've made onto what is called the clipboard. And now we're going to do the other arrow and put it down onto the other two frames. We now have color corrected images, okay? Not just corrected, but we actually enriched the images with just some very, very quick, simple adjustments. Gotta love it. So that's those images pretty much ready to go, okay? I'm pretty happy with those. I think this image here of Michelle is getting a little tiny bit dark, but it's kind of nice. It's quite moody. Perhaps what we could do is just select that one particular image and just bring up the brightness a little bit more, just to lift out what's happening in the face in through here. And that's all we've got to do with that. I don't think anything else needs to be done. My assistant Ben has just pointed out a really good feature called the Clipboard. And where you would use the clipboard is, you've just seen how we can make an adjustment to an image and apply those adjustments to other similar images that have similar lighting setup, camera, etc. Okay, but the question is, what if you do a crop, or you make some other adjustment that you don't want to copy across to all of your images? What do you do then? Well, it's really similar. It's really simple. You can use something called the clipboard. And what the clipboard does is it stores all of the adjustments that you've made, but it gives you the option to deselect when you're copying those options. So let's see exactly how that works now, and we'll do that with a crop. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to crop one of the images of Michelle and make a series of adjustments, but we won't apply the crop to the other images. We will only apply the various color settings and other bits and pieces that we do. So let's have a look at that now. So I've got my 3 images of Michelle here. I typically like to work with one image on the screen at a time, and that's what I'm going to do. So we've got this image here. Let's make some very basic adjustments. Let's bring up the brightness a little bit. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Maybe go a little bit more. I don't think the color temperature needs any adjustment to it. I think the saturation could probably go down a tiny bit. We could play around with the style and have a look at a style here and just see if there's anything we like the look of. This is a really nice feature because we can actually go through the styles, and without actually choosing them, we can get a preview of what they look like just by holding on our cursor over the different things. So I don't think there's anything there that for me is right for what I want to do with the pictures of Michelle. So I won't apply any styles to this. Okay. In terms of local adjustments, nope, don't want to do any of that. Clarity, yeah, why not? Let's add a little bit of classic clarity. I love clarity. So just a little bit of clarity in. Don't really need much. Can't see much happening there. Bit of a vignette that will just sort of bring things around quite nicely, bring the attention back into Michelle. You can also do positive vignetting as well. I'm not sure people are aware of that, but that can be quite a nice thing, particularly if you've done something where, if you've shot someone on, let's say, the typical white background, and you may be going a little bit darker in the corners because your lens vignetting or something like that. Well, you can apply a positive vignette, and that'll just clean up those corners. Normally for us, we put a little bit of a negative vignette on with most of what we do, just to draw the attention back in around our actual subject. So that's what I'm going to do here, a little bit of a negative vignette, and don't really want to do too much else to this. Maybe lift the overall exposure a smidge, but I don't want to do too much else. I think that looks great. I think Michelle looks gorgeous. Maybe do a little crop as well, and then I think we're done. So I think this would work really nicely. Cropped something like that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm liking that. So what I want to do now is I want to apply the adjustments that I've made to Michelle, but I don't want to include the crop. So that's the clipboard. Let's have a look at that now. So this is what the clipboard looks like over here. The thing with all the lines here, we can just tap on that, and you can see we've got the clipboard, all the details of all the adjustments we've made. So you can see right at the top, we made some adjustments to the brightness, to the saturation, a little bit of vignetting. And if we come down here to composition, let's just turn that off like that, and let's go copy. Okay, and we don't want that applying it, so we're going to turn that off, and then we simply go apply there, and you can see the other 2 images have taken on the color variations that we made, but the crop hasn't carried across, and that's because we turned the crop off before we applied the adjustments. Okay, so that's the end of part 2. Do leave a message on the blog if there's any questions that you want me to answer. I'm just really hoping that this is straightforward and simple, and it's useful. So in part 3, we're going to look at how we actually go about processing our final images. Thanks very much.